Hey everyone, welcome to the Summer Rewind edition of the Think Energy podcast. While we recharge our batteries during these lazy, hazy days of summer, we're bringing back some blasts from our podcast past. We'll be reintroducing some of the most popular interviews that garnered a lot of attention and interest. Perhaps not a coincidence, but they're all focused on the future of the energy sector with themes like renewable energy, green innovation, and being eco-conscious. So I hope you truly enjoy our Summer Rewind edition. In the meantime, have a happy summer, and we'll be back September 6th to kick off another exciting season of the Think Energy podcast. I'm Dan Sege from Hydro Ottawa, and I'll be hosting the Think Energy podcast. So here's today's big question. Are you looking to better understand the fast-changing world of energy? Join me every 2 weeks and get a unique perspective from industry leaders as we deep dive and discuss some of the coolest trends, emerging technologies, and latest innovations that drive the energy sector. So stay tuned as we explore some traditional and some quirky facets of this industry. This is the Think Energy podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back. This is the Think Energy podcast. If you're following energy trends around the world, you've likely heard about energy storage. It's a big topic and there's a lot to unpack. While there are many types of systems to store energy, I think it's easiest to think of energy storage as the battery that you use to capture energy when it's produced, so you can use it at another time, perhaps when energy isn't available, like during a power outage. With renewable energy continuing to grow in Canada, where does energy storage fit? You have to wonder if energy storage will become the new power plants of the future. One thing is certain, energy storage will play an important role in the future supply mix for electricity, most obviously in creating a more flexible and reliable grid system. For example, when there is more supply than demand, such as during the night when energy costs are lower and power plants continue to operate, the surplus electricity generation can be sent to power energy storage systems instead of being sold at a loss or going to waste. While wind and solar are great, they can only produce energy at a certain time. This reality has been a barrier for mass integration into a modern electricity grid. Since the constant availability of reliable power is paramount to the country and our economy, a complementary technology like energy storage could help fill the gap for managing today's renewables. Synergies between wind energy, solar energy, and energy storage also mean that these technologies can provide a broader range of services to the grid when used in a coordinated manner that reduce overall electricity systems cost, such as building new and expensive generating plants. But at what scale are we at for energy storage today, and where is it headed in the near future? Is there a strategy and evidence that energy storage is the solution we're looking for? In short, where is Canada at on the energy storage journey to adoption? This leads me to today's big question. Is energy storage the missing piece in the renewables jigsaw puzzle and the solution for Canada's energy needs? Joining me today is a very special guest, Justin Rangooni, the Executive Director at Energy Storage Canada, who's here to help us unbox the energy storage mystery. Justin, welcome to the Think Energy podcast. Justin, can you tell us a bit about yourself, what energy storage is, and what your organization, Energy Storage Canada, does, what it's all about?
Of course, Daniel, and thanks for having me on to chat. Always glad to chat with you and see our friends at Hydro Ottawa again. Well, Energy Storage Canada is the national voice for energy storage. We are the only association dedicated to advancing energy storage in the country. We have over 60 members from across the energy storage value chain, from the biggest global companies to the most innovative startups. And we develop policy positions, advocate and educate decision makers, and host educational and networking opportunities through webinars and our annual conference. We are basically energy storage 24/7, 365 days a year.
Cool. Okay. At a high level, what are we talking about in terms of large scale or grid scale energy storage? What sizes are available? How long can the energy be stored for? And is the goal to power cities for days or weeks?
Oh, a good question again. What makes energy storage so unique is the varying degrees of sizes, capabilities, and technologies. In terms of larger grid scale, we're talking about projects in the hundreds up to 1,000 megawatts. But energy storage projects can be in the kilowatts as well. It all depends on the project and where it's located. And depending on the discharge rate of how much energy is injected back into the grid, it could be a couple hours or even more. Again, all depends on the technology and the capabilities. And the goal for this sector is really to optimize generation, optimize distribution and transmission assets, provide the grid with reliable service, and support the goal of affordability for all ratepayers.
Okay. Um, Tesla made a splash back in 2015 with its announcement of the Powerwall system, essentially small scale energy storage for homes. Has there been any movement in this area?
So that is definitely the wave of the future as customers demand more choice and control of their energy needs. So small scale energy storage for homes will be getting there, especially as you see increased prevalence of electric vehicles and rooftop solar systems, residential storage systems, using the EV battery itself and hybriding with the solar system would be in lockstep. What you're seeing a lot now in Ontario is behind the meter storage devices for large industrial customers, which are helping manage their consumption. So it's getting there. But right now, it's not quite, but we are getting there into the small scale.
Okay. Justin, can you explain what the clean energy goals are for the energy storage sector? What types of policies at the municipal, provincial, federal level need to be in place to succeed?
Sure. So our clean energy goals are to optimize cleaner sources of generation and to help with the energy transition. And we're talking really a lot about the provinces are still relying on coal, especially, and planning to transition away. So what we say is that we can optimize your existing cleaner assets, variable generation or otherwise, by having storage within this system. So you do not necessarily need to build new, dirtier forms of generation. You can use energy storage to twin with your cleaner sources that you have. And in terms to do that, we're talking about removal of barriers, market opportunities, and just a general sense that energy storage resources are a mainstream tool for system operators to use.
Moving on to the question, Justin, on how can Canada unlock the potential of the energy storage?
And that is the key question, and it was the focus of our annual conference recently. And in fact, it was the title of a valuation study we did for Ontario that we released this summer, which concluded that if the province had at least 1,000 megawatts of energy storage enabled in the province, over the next decade, ratepayers would enjoy a net savings of over $2 billion. And to unlock that potential, again, it comes down to the removal of regulatory barriers to fully enable energy storage and its value offerings and the creation of market opportunities. And again, for system operators to start to see things a little differently, see energy storage as a tool to be used. And that can be applied to the distribution side as well, that instead of traditional poles and wires or traditional generation sources, that you look at energy storage, which is a bit of a jack of all trades or a Swiss Army knife to provide various service offerings for you. And so it's starting to see things a little differently with energy storage in the mix.
Now, the Canadian government recently announced a $10 billion infrastructure investment plan and specifically mentioned it would support both renewable and energy storage. What are your thoughts on the government plans?
So we were very supportive of that. We were supportive of anything that comes from the federal government in terms of helping with the economics of energy storage projects or helping to facilitate energy storage projects across the country. So with the announcement from the Canada's Infrastructure Bank, which is about a $2.5 billion funding initiative, we are very supportive and we look forward to working with the CIB on details. And we are looking forward to an upcoming federal budget, which we hope will include even more funding opportunities, grants, other types of programs for energy storage going forward.
Okay. What has been the impact of the pandemic on the energy storage industry?
Well, as with everything in every sector, it's the uncertainty that it has caused. With what decisions could be being made by the government and decision makers that could have unintended consequences. For instance, in Ontario, their decision earlier this year to place a hiatus on the ICI program, the Industrial Conservation Initiative, we what it caused an unintended consequence of the decision because it put a lot of projects that were about to be built behind the meter on hold. So we understand what the challenges the government is facing to make decisions around the pandemic. We just hope that I think it stressed the importance of communication to understand how everybody could be affected by those decisions. So we are working with the government to ensure that we're here, talk to us, we're here to help. Let's try to find a nice path forward to help with the economic recovery coming out of this pandemic, hopefully in a not so distant future.
Okay. Do you see the development and scaling of energy storage solution being imperative to successful transformation of the energy sector and the electricity grid? If so, how do you see energy storage accelerating in the years to come?
I think it's the latter question that is really key because we're seeing energy storage accelerating throughout the energy system across Canada. And we're talking about from residential use, electric vehicles use as a battery, to the continued use of behind the meter for large customers, more hybrid projects to better optimize current assets, to transmission and distribution deferral. So we're really looking at the entire gambit for energy storage's role to be played. And it really, again, depends on those market opportunities and removing barriers to really unlock energy storage's potential.
Given the grid expertise of utilities, what role will they play in the energy storage field?
So we see that as the role being absolutely critical. As our utility members we have ourselves, they view energy storage as an essential tool as part of their system planning. And we believe all distributors and all utilities across the country will do as well. And we expect to see the only enhancement of energy storage resources as a tool, as an alternative to traditional poles and wires for utilities to use, which can better optimize utilities' investments in their poles and wires and help with ratepayers' affordability issues as well by using storage, which is a cheaper alternative in many cases to just building the status quo.
Okay, Justin, it's now time to pull out your crystal ball. With plans to further electrify public transportation and promote urban intensification, do you think that utilities are likely to account for a large share of battery energy storage in Canada?
So if I was to get the crystal ball, I think the use of energy storage resources on the distribution level is inevitable, and that's a good thing. So I think we'll be seeing utilities utilizing energy storage resources in front and behind the meter in much greater share than they are doing now. I think with the removal of regulatory barriers and just a more general sense that seeing energy storage as a tool for utilities to use, I think we're going to see a lot greater share, and that's a really good thing for the utilities, the ratepayers, and the system as a whole.
Now, the next question is a mouthful. The economic value of energy storage is closely tied to other major trends impacting today's power system, most notably the increasing penetration of wind and solar generation. How does battery storage help make better use of electricity system assets, can it defer or even eliminate unnecessary investments in capital intensive assets, like building new and expensive generating plants to meet our country's forecasted energy needs?
So, yeah, that was a mouthful. And I think the response is really short. I think, yes, it can. And it's one of the major value propositions of energy storage. Depending on the business case and again, the technology you're using beyond just batteries, because energy storage could be compressed air facilities, could be flywheels, pump storage, thermal storage. There are many different technologies available. And depending on the business case being used, you could see that. You could see it as a deferment or in place of building traditional generation, or in addition, the deferment of just building traditional poles and wires, for instance. It all depends on the business case. But again, because it's a tool, that's what we're trying to say, is have that as a tool so you can see if it is the better alternative.
Now, are you ready to close us off with some rapid fire questions?
Of course, those are my favorite.
Okay. Well, what is your favorite word?
Cookies.
Okay. What is the one thing you can't live without?
Cookies.
Okay. What habit or hobby have you picked up during shelter in place?
Well, it would be cutting my own hair and cutting my son's hair.
Okay. I thought you were going to say baking cookies.
Oh, baking cookies. There you go. That would have been a good answer too.
Okay. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Oh, I would say flying, so we can skip the airport lines. That'd be the best.
If you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you tell him?
Well, I would say get your sleep in now, because with 3 kids, that is definitely in short supply.
Good one. And lastly, what do you currently find most interesting in your sector?
Well, I think the most interesting thing is the endless opportunities for innovation and creativity. With energy storage being a tool that can be used by utilities, by customers, by the system operators, the possibilities are endless with energy storage. And that's what makes the sector so exciting.
Well, Justin, we've reached the end of another episode of Think Energy Podcast. Last question for you. How can our listeners learn more about you and Energy Storage Canada? How can they connect?
Well, that is the best question of the day. They can look at our website at energystoragecanada.org. All the information is there of who we are, what we do, joining up for memberships, of course. You can see all our publications and our submissions. And there's a lot of great information up there. So check out energystoragecanada.org.
Cool. Again, thank you for joining me today. I hope you had a lot of fun.
I sure did, Daniel. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Thank you for joining us today. I truly hope you enjoyed this episode of the Think Energy Podcast. For past episodes, make sure you visit our website, hydroottawa.com/podcast. Lastly, if you found value in this podcast, be sure to subscribe. Anyway, this podcast is a wrap. Cheers, everyone.